You ever notice how disasters don't show up like movie villains? They sneak in as tiny glitches, a dead phone, a late bus, a drip from the ceiling, and somehow flip your whole life. My story didn't start with fireworks. It started with 3% battery, a cracked screen, and a guy who looked like he could bench press a pickup but spoke like a kindergarten teacher. I'm Riley. 30. Portland, Oregon, bridges, bookstores, rain that can't mind its own business. I just clawed my way out of a 4-year mess with a man named Brent. If you've ever dated a control freak with a charming smile, you already know the template. I'm just passionate becomes where are you and who are you with? Then you made me do this. I moved out, blocked his number, told my friends I was done. And I was. Sort of. Because Brent didn't stop. He just changed tactics. He never touched me again, smart guy, legally speaking, but he learned how to make other people pay for being around me. A bartender who complimented my jacket found his car keyed. A coworker who helped carry my monitor to the parking lot got doxxed on a burner Reddit account with a bunch of lies that tanked his freelance gigs for weeks. A neighbor who said good morning too cheerfully woke up to a brick through his window. The message was always the same: Riley is a problem. Stay away. So, yeah, I got quiet. I stopped being a person and turned into a caution sign. Work, home, groceries, back. Hoodie up, head down, don't make eye contact, don't be friendly. The worst part wasn't the fear, it was losing the part of myself that liked people. Then came Tuesday. Deadline day. I'm a UX writer for a small app company, think buttons that say what you mean without sounding like a robot. My boss needed final copy by noon. At 10:17 a.m., my phone slipped off the counter and exploded into glitter. It buzzed once, sighed like a dying fish, and went black. I plugged it in, begged, cursed, prayed. Nothing. Panic makes you practical. I grabbed my coat, jogged 2 blocks through misty rain, and ducked into a hole-in-the-wall repair place under the Burnside Bridge. You know the kind, window full of old Game Boys, a bell so sensitive it rings if you breathe, faint smell of solder and cinnamon coffee. Be right with you, a voice called from the back. Then he stepped out. If refrigerator boxes turned into people, they'd look like this guy. 6-something, shoulders like an armoire, a faded flannel over a t-shirt that said Park & Sons Carpentry, and forearms dusted with sawdust like glitter for lumberjacks. Nose slightly crooked. A pale scar through one eyebrow. But his eyes, warm, brown, steady. Not the kind of steady that pins you down. The kind that sets a glass of water in front of you and says, drink. You're safe. What happened? He asked. I held up the phone like a dead mouse. Gravity and bad luck. He took it like it was made of glass. I'm Noah, he said. Screen's toast. Maybe the battery. You want a deadline? Yes. Noon. And my boss thinks I'm allergic to excuses. He smiled. I like a challenge. Give me 40 minutes. There's a food cart pod next door, get a coffee, breathe. I'll wave you through the window if I need something. Normally I would have warned him. Normally I would have said, hey, doing anything nice for me is an insurance claim waiting to happen. But my brain was on fire. 40 minutes felt like a lifeline, so I nodded, bought a coffee outside, and stood under a string of wet bulbs pretending not to stare at the shop window. No sign of Brent. But if you've ever lived like a deer, you know, the woods are louder inside your head. I sipped coffee and ran through possible disasters. Noah gets targeted. His windows get smashed. His brakes get cut. He loses business because of me. I rehearsed the apology I might have to give. 45 minutes later the bell dinged. Noah waved me in. Good news, he said, holding out my phone like a doctor bringing a newborn. Screen replaced. Battery swapped. And I made you a temporary case because this thing is naked and clumsy. He'd literally cut a scrap of leather into a sleeve, punched 2 neat holes, and laced it with twine. Handmade. He slid my phone in and it fit like a dream. How much? I asked. He named a number that didn't make me want to sell a kidney. I paid. You saved my job, I said. I owe you. Owe me a review, he said. And if the screen acts weird, come back. I'll fix it. I stepped outside, exhaled, and that's when I saw him, parked across the street in his stupid gray sedan, hands on the wheel like he was guiding a spaceship. Brent. Hair neat, beard trimmed, eyes like puddles that freeze overnight. He didn't get out. He just held my gaze and smiled. Not the nice kind. The kind that says, try it. See what happens. A tremor ran through me. I turned away, walked fast, nearly jogged back to the office. Delivered the copy. Smiled when my boss said nice work, and hyperventilated in a bathroom stall for 5 minutes. I checked the shop's Instagram every hour for a week. No vandalism posts. No were closed due to unexpected repairs. I walked past one afternoon on accident. Noah was inside, laughing with a woman who had his same nose, maybe his sister, fixing a Nintendo Switch for a kid who was telling a very long story about Mario. The bell dinged, the kid left, Noah looked up and saw me through the window. He lifted a hand. I lifted mine. I kept walking. 3 days later, Saturday, I drifted through the Portland Saturday market for the first time in months. The river smelled like rain and metal. Artists were selling earrings made from bicycle parts. A busker played a sad trumpet. And there he was, Noah, standing by a booth that sold tiny succulent gardens and teacups, holding a paper tray with too many donuts dusted in powdered sugar. "You like these?" he asked when I got close enough to pretend we hadn't planned this. We hadn't. But sometimes the universe does. I mean, I'm not anti-donut. "Good," he said, handing me one. Because I bought too many. We stood there under a string of prayer flags and ate sugar like teenagers. He talked first, about his shop, which he runs with his cousin Jay. About the carpentry business he's slowly rebuilding with his uncle after a rough year. About how he grew up in eastern Washington climbing trees and nicknaming pickup trucks. "And you?" he asked. "I write those little sentences inside apps that make you feel less dumb when you click the wrong thing." He laughed. "You're doing God's work." We wandered to a booth selling hand-printed maps of Oregon. He told me his favorite hike. I told him mine. He listened the way people only listen when they're not trying to impress you. When he finally asked for my number, I felt the old panic start to crawl up my throat. "Before I do this," I said, "I need to tell you something." We found a bench facing the river. Seagulls argued overhead. I told him the outline, the 4 years, the breakup, the quiet war. I didn't give him the whole movie, just the highlight reel. He didn't interrupt. Didn't blink. When I finished, he nodded like he'd already known. "Thanks for telling me," he said. "You should probably delete my number before Brent starts sending you dead fish in the mail." "I'm not scared of your ex," Noah said, soft but steady. "Also, I host women's self-defense nights at my cousin's gym on Wednesdays. He teaches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not looking for trouble, but I know how to end it. Are you trying to make me swoon on a public bench?" He smiled. "If it happens, I will not call 911. We traded numbers. He texted later, "You owe me another donut for that phone case." I typed deal and spent 20 minutes staring at the word like it might bite me. Our first real date was Tuesday at a ramen place that smells like heaven and steam. He accepted chopsticks like a man who respects noodles. We talked about music. He's into sad folk songs, I'm a pop girl with a chaotic playlist. He split his egg with surgeon precision and dropped half into my bowl without asking, like he'd known I was about to do the same for him. When he walked me to my car, that old dread crawled into my bones. I scanned the street, the roofs, the shadows. No gray sedan. No puddle eyes. No one noticed me looking. "We can take the long way," he said. "No rush." So we did. Past a closed record store. Around puddles that held perfect neon. We didn't kiss that night. Just stood by my car smiling like idiots while our breath fogged in the air. 2 days later, he met my friend Serena for 5 minutes after we bumped into her outside Powell's. She texted me after, "He's a golden retriever in a lumberjack suit." Proceed. Then came the test. Friday night, my phone buzzed with a blocked number. "Cute that you think you can go out again. Tell your new boyfriend he should lock his doors." I sat very still. The room hummed. I took a screenshot and sent it to myself because that's what my therapist taught me: document, don't engage. My thumb hovered over Noah's name. I didn't want to drag him into the mud. But I also didn't want to be alone with the muck. I texted, "Got a message. Brent's being Brent. I'm okay, just shaky." The 3 dots appeared before I'd even set the phone down. "You home?" he asked. "I can drop off dinner and leave it on your doorstep if you want space." Who does that? Who offers presence and distance in the same breath? I stared at the screen, tears surprising me, because I didn't even know that was allowed. I typed, "Come up. If you're cool with it." 10 minutes later he was at my door with Thai food in a toolbox. "The toolbox is for your lock," he said, holding it up. "Your deadbolt is misaligned. It sticks. Easy fix." He didn't touch me until I reached for him. He didn't comment on my shaking hands, just handed me a fork and talked about nothing for 5 minutes until my heartbeat climbed down from the ceiling. Then he installed a strike plate that actually fits, tightened the hinge, and showed me how to use a door wedge at night for peace of mind. When he left, he did something that lodged under my ribs and stayed there. He stood inside the door, looked at me, and said, "You don't have to be brave alone, okay? You can be scared with me and I won't make it heavier." I wanted to say 1,000 things. I settled for, "Thank you." The next afternoon, Brent tried a new trick. He didn't hit me, didn't show up at my door. He walked into Noah's shop at closing time, because of course he found it, this city is big and small, and leaned on the counter like he owned the lease. How do I know? Because Noah told me that night over a lake at 6 a.m. He came in, Noah said, sipping broth like this was weather. Introduced himself. Did the whole "I'm just concerned about Riley" routine. Then he lowered his voice and said I should keep my distance. "What did you say?" I asked, stomach going ice cold. I told him I don't respond to threats, Noah said, but I do respond to patterns. And I've seen his. I also told him I document everything. Cameras in the shop. Timestamped video. If anything happens, to me, you, my windows, my cousin's dog, I report it and provide evidence. My mouth went dry. How did he react? He blinked, Noah said. You can always tell when a bully hits a wall. He left. I locked up and came straight to you. Something in me unclenched like a fist that had been disguised as a heart for too long. It wasn't that Noah was big. It wasn't that he knew jiu-jitsu. It was that he understood the rules of this particular war, keep records, set boundaries, say things clearly, and refused to play in the dark. That night, I slept 6 hours without waking. The first full night in, I don't know, 2 years? When I woke up, rain was knocking lightly on the window. I made coffee. I texted Serena, I think my life just took a left turn in the right direction. She replied with 14 heart emojis and a knife for Brent. That's friendship. Here's the truth I didn't want to admit. I had been waiting for someone to rescue me and hating myself for it, because I'm not a princess and my tower has Wi-Fi. But Noah didn't rescue me. He just stood next to me and turned on a bigger light. He made space for me to reach for my own hand again. And somewhere inside the part of me that still counted exits and memorized license plates, another voice finally cleared its throat and said, "We might make it out of this, kid." The message that changed everything, you know, that weird calm you get right before your life blows up again? That was me, 4 months later, coffee in hand, finally breathing like a normal person. Noah and I had slipped into something that felt suspiciously like peace. We cooked dinners, argued about whether pineapple belonged on pizza, and took long drives up the Columbia River just to watch the fog roll in. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. Then one morning, I got a message request on Instagram from a girl named Tessa Blake. Her profile picture was all sunshine, big brown eyes, a bright yellow sundress, a dog with its tongue out. The message said, "Hey, this might be random, but I think we dated the same guy, Brent. I really need to talk to you." My stomach twisted like someone had poured ice into it. I stared at her profile. Brent had moved on. Of course he had. That's what people like him do, they recycle their tricks. They just changed the name on the leash. I showed Noah that night. He was sitting at the kitchen counter eating leftover pasta, calm as always. He looked at the message, then at me. "You gonna reply?" "I don't know. What if it's bait? What if he's using her to find me again? What if it's not?" he said. "You could help her before it gets bad." He was right, and I hated that he was right. So I messaged back, "Hey, yeah, I knew him. What's going on?" She responded instantly, like she'd been waiting. "It's just, he told me his ex was crazy, said she made up stories to ruin him, but I found your old restraining order post online, and some stuff isn't adding up. He's been checking my phone, asking who texts me, showing up at my job. I feel like I'm going insane." My throat closed up. I typed, "You're not insane. You're in danger." We met the next day at a bakery on Alberta Street. Tessa looked like I used to, nervous, apologetic for existing. She kept glancing at the door every time it opened. "He says I make him angry," she whispered. "That if I just listen more, he wouldn't lose control." I wanted to scream, that's the script. Instead, I told her everything, how it started, how it escalated, the silent war he waged after I left. She listened, hands trembling around her coffee cup. When I finished, she said quietly, "He told me you tried to stab him." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Yeah, that's one of his favorites. Next week he'll tell people I kidnapped his dog. She half smiled, then started crying. I thought I was helping him heal. You can't fix someone who's breaking you, I said. Get out now. She nodded, wiped her face, and promised she would. I didn't believe her, until 3 nights later, my phone buzzed at 1:12 a.m. It was Tessa. I did it. I left. He's losing it. He's been outside my apartment for an hour. My pulse spiked. I woke Noah up. We're going, I said. Wait, what's happening? He's there. At her place. Noah was already pulling on his jacket. 15 minutes later, we were parked a block from Tessa's building. Brent's car was right there, same gray sedan, same arrogance. He was sitting behind the wheel, staring up at her window like a ghost rehearsing a haunting. Noah stepped out. I tried to stop him, but he just said, "Stay here." He walked up to Brent's car, calm, deliberate. I couldn't hear what he said, but Brent's face went through stages: smirk, confusion, anger, fear. Then he started the engine and drove off like the devil was chasing him. Noah came back, expression unreadable. He won't bother her again, he said. What did you tell him? That if he keeps this up, I'll hand the security footage from my shop and every screenshot we have to his employer. He works at a financial firm, HR's gonna love that story. I blinked. You researched him? Know your enemy, Noah said simply. Rule number 1. I stared at him. The mix of gentleness and calculation in his voice was something I'd never seen before. He wasn't reckless. He was ready. When we went upstairs, Tessa was still shaking, but alive, free. We stayed until she fell asleep. On the drive home, the sun was rising over the Willamette, and I realized something wild. I wasn't scared. Not of Brent. Not of what came next. The fear had finally shifted into something sharper: anger. The kind that doesn't burn you, it burns the cage. I looked at Noah and said, I'm done running. He nodded like he'd been waiting for that line. Then let's make sure no one else has to. And right there, in a beat-up Subaru with coffee breath and adrenaline in our veins, I decided, I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was the evidence that could finally stop him. It's wild how fast fear can turn into purpose once you stop letting it boss you around. After that night with Tessa, something clicked. I wasn't just running from Brent anymore, I was running toward something. Toward truth. Toward closure. Toward the version of myself that didn't flinch at her own reflection. The next morning, Tessa called. He's gone, she whispered. I think he knows it's over. Good, I said. Now we make it official. Noah helped her file a restraining order. He knew the forms better than the clerk. While we were at the courthouse, a woman from the domestic violence unit pulled me aside. Are you Riley Evans? She asked. We've heard about your case. You're not the only one. That sentence hit like a punch. Not the only one. Turns out there were 5 others. 5 women, all in Oregon, all with the same story: charming guy, slow control, quick rage. I went home that night and stared at the ceiling while Noah slept beside me. The word pattern kept echoing in my head. I opened my laptop, dug through old emails, screenshots, messages, anything that tied Brent to his games. I sent them to the investigator assigned to Tessa's case. He called 2 days later. This is gold, he said. We're building a pattern of behavior case. It's strong. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I heard that word, strong. 2 weeks later, I got an invitation to meet the others. A group of women who'd once thought they were crazy, sitting in a coffee shop sharing the same scars. There was Dana, a teacher. Lila, a nurse. Hannah, who still shook when her phone buzzed. We didn't hug right away. We just looked at each other, really looked, and it felt like exhaling after years underwater. He used to call me his anchor, Dana said. Funny how anchors drown you if you hold on too long. We laughed. The sad, exhausted kind of laugh that means yeah, I get it. That day we decided something simple: no more silence. If Brent wanted to keep playing puppet master, we'd cut the strings together. Meanwhile, Noah stood by me like a wall made of patience. He'd never once tried to take over. He just showed up, steady, always there. When I got overwhelmed with paperwork or panic, he'd say, breathe. We fight smart, not scared. He even installed cameras around our apartment and taught Tessa how to check for tracking devices on her car. The man was a fortress with a heart. One night, after another long meeting with the investigator, I came home drained. Noah was at the kitchen table sketching something on a napkin, new layout ideas for the shop, maybe. I kissed his shoulder and said, "You ever wish you'd never met me? Would have been easier." He looked up. Easier, yeah. Better? Not a chance. That weekend, we were invited to give our statements in front of a district attorney named Victoria Mills. She had that calm authority of someone who's seen monsters before and knows how to cage them. "I'll be honest," she said. "Cases like this are hard. But with all of you speaking out, we've got a shot." She laid out the plan: build a solid harassment and stalking case. Bring every witness. Every screenshot. Every ounce of proof. The thought of testifying made my stomach turn, but when I looked at Tessa's nervous smile and Dana's shaking hands, I knew there was no going back. I'd already lost too much to fear. I wasn't giving it another inch. The next few weeks were a blur of therapy sessions, paperwork, and late-night talks with Noah about what justice even means. "It's not about revenge," I said one night, sitting on the balcony. "It's about reclaiming oxygen." "Then breathe," he said softly. "You've earned it." A month later, the DA's office called. The preliminary hearing was set. I didn't tell my mom right away, didn't want her to worry, but she showed up at my door 2 days later with homemade cookies and the exact same line she used when I was a kid: "You can do hard things, baby girl." The day of the hearing, I wore a simple blue dress and the leather bracelet Noah made me, my armor, he called it. In the courtroom, Brent looked smaller than I remembered. Clean-cut, expensive suit, fake calm. He glanced at me once and quickly looked away when he saw the row behind me: 5 women, 2 lawyers, and 1 man built like a human mountain. Noah didn't say a word. He just crossed his arms and stared until Brent turned pale. When it was my turn to testify, my voice trembled at first. Then it didn't. I told them everything: the threats, the stalking, the manipulation, the fear. Every line, every bruise, every sleepless night. I expected shame to creep in. It didn't. What I felt instead was power, not the kind that crushes, but the kind that rebuilds. When I finished, Victoria nodded. "You did good," she whispered. "You just made a lot of people safer." Outside, reporters were waiting, but I didn't stop for them. I walked straight into Noah's arms, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a storm that finally knew where to land. That night, over dinner, Noah raised his glass of cider and said, "To every woman who stopped running." We clinked glasses. "And to the men who stood beside them," I added. Later, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and thought about how far I'd come, from hiding behind blinds to standing in court. From whispering apologies to speaking truth out loud. From surviving to living. Tomorrow, the case would go public. Brent would face charges. But for me, the verdict was already in: fear lost. You ever have one of those mornings where the world feels quiet? Not empty, just still, like the air itself is waiting for you to decide what comes next. That's what the day after court felt like. No sirens in my chest, no footsteps behind me, no ghosts in my phone. Just morning light leaking through the blinds and the smell of Noah making pancakes in the kitchen like it was any other Saturday. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, realizing something wild: I didn't need to look over my shoulder anymore. Brent was out on bail, sure, but the power shift had already happened. He wasn't the man I feared, he was the man who finally had to answer for what he did. And I wasn't the girl who hid. I was the woman who showed up. When I walked into the kitchen, Noah flipped a pancake and grinned. "Morning, hero." "Don't," I said, laughing. "You make it sound like I fought a dragon." "You kind of did," he said. "Except the dragon had Wi-Fi and anger issues." I laughed so hard I snorted coffee through my nose. That's the thing about healing, it doesn't show up with fireworks. It sneaks in between laughter and burnt pancakes, when your body finally forgets to brace for impact. We spent the next few weeks getting back to normal. Or our new version of normal. Tessa found a new apartment with better locks and joined a support group. Dana started painting again, her art's dark but beautiful, like storm clouds that finally learned to let go. Lila started volunteering at a shelter for women leaving abusive relationships. Every one of us carried scars, but none of us carried them alone anymore. Brent pled guilty to stalking and harassment. 2 years probation, counseling, and a no-contact order that stretches longer than his ego. It wasn't the dramatic Hollywood justice I used to dream about, but it was real. It was something. And the best part? The judge said one thing I'll never forget: power ends where accountability begins. I walked out of that courtroom feeling taller. Not because of what happened to him, but because of what happened to me. That night, Noah and I went back to the same riverside market where we first met. The same spot where he'd handed me a donut and made me laugh for the first time in years. It was sunset, all orange and gold across the water. He looked at me and said, "You ever think about how far you've come?" "Every day," I said. "And you?" "Every second," he said. "But I've been thinking, maybe it's time we build something together." He pulled out a small wooden box, handmade, obviously, and inside was a ring. Simple, no diamonds, just a thin band carved with a wave pattern. "You're kidding," I said, tears already in my throat. "Nope," he said, smiling. "You've rebuilt your life, Riles. Let's build the rest together." I didn't even say yes. I just kissed him, hard, messy, real. Because that's what life feels like when you stop living in fear, messy and real and beautiful. We got married 6 months later in his cousin's backyard under fairy lights and Oregon drizzle. The same women who once sat trembling in a courtroom now danced barefoot in wet grass. Tessa caught the bouquet and screamed like she'd just won the lottery. My mom cried. Noah's uncle made a toast that ended with, "May your love be stronger than your Wi-Fi signal," and honestly, it's been holding up so far. Sometimes people ask if I forgive Brent. I don't. Forgiveness is overrated. I don't hate him either, hate still gives him rent-free space in my head. I just don't think about him. He's background noise in a life that finally turned the volume up on everything good. Now I teach a free writing class every other Saturday for women trying to tell their stories. Not polished essays, just truth on paper. The first thing I tell them is this: you don't have to be fearless to fight back. You just have to be tired of being scared. And once you reach that point, there's no going back. Sometimes I still walk past that little phone repair shop where it all started. The window's different now, new logo, new plants, a handwritten sign that says "We fix what's broken." And every time I see it, I smile. Because that's exactly what we did. If you told me 3 years ago that I'd be standing here, married, safe, laughing again, I would have laughed in your face. Back then, I thought survival was the end goal. Turns out, survival is just the first chapter. The real story starts when you finally remember what joy feels like, when you realize you can smile at a stranger, order coffee without panic, or wake up without dread. That's what freedom looks like. Not fireworks. Just peace. And every morning, when Noah hands me coffee with that same stupid grin, I remind myself, love doesn't save you. It just shows you what's worth saving in yourself. So yeah, the dragon's gone, the light's back, and the girl who used to whisper now tells her story out loud. And this time, she's not telling it to survive. She's telling it to live.